what I like about music is that the misery of it, or the longing of it, longing for love in your life, or loneliness, or sadness and depression. Music just speaks to that so well. And it's such a great tool for bringing us together that I don't know if a computer can really touch on that, because I'm not sure it can ever feel something like that.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of Inner Sleeve, the podcast taking a behind-the-scenes look at all things music. I'm Cassius Morris, Joe Pacheco joining me on the line. What's up, my man?
Not much, man. I always say not much, but doing pretty good, man. Enjoying the summer, whatever's left of it. It's like, it felt like it never got here and then just blew by, right?
It just is. It's going quicker than you can even catch it, and it's one of those things. But you got to get out there and enjoy the most of it. And it seems like the music fans out there at these festivals, I've been watching the videos on YouTube. It seems like they're at least doing that. So if you guys are out there, we hope you're catching some of that summer sun and some of the music stuff going on. Today's guest on the podcast is the one and only Kurt Newman, of course, the mastermind behind BoDeans, a super unique guy, and definitely someone who, I mean, talk about a veteran in the business, Joe.
Not only a veteran in the business, like creating, great music, performing it well, and then performing every single instrument, and then building your own instruments. Like, he's done it all, right?
From mixing, mastering, to building guitars, we chat with him about all the different aspects of his musical craft, and you guys are not going to want to miss this. Some sad news coming out of the world of music today. Olivia Newton-John, of course, the iconic actress and singer from Grease, and of course moving on to her solo career later in life, has passed away at the age of 73. Now, fortunately, she did pass away peacefully of natural causes. But still, Joe, nonetheless, a very sad loss and a big loss for the world of show business in general, I think.
Yeah, like when this came across my feed, I was like, oh, wow, Olivia, I've like, it's probably one of the first musical memories. Like, if I can go back, because like her song was just like, and Grease obviously was like everywhere, right? As a kid growing up. And like, I still remember like, Let's Get Physical, right? That her big hit, like as a kid, So it's like probably one of my earliest musical memories. So it was very sad, and like just to see the reaction, because we haven't really heard much about her, which is a good thing. I'm saying that positively in the sense that she's not like a headline grabber or attention grabber. Seemed like to be just a super down to earth person, which is rare. It's the vibe I got.
It was very interesting to see the fact that she gave this vibe that was so different from a lot of the actors and actresses, especially at that time. I mean, somebody like even John Travolta, I got a lot of positive traits from him, but being humble wasn't necessarily one of them, But a girl like her, she seemed to be a little more down to earth than the other actors and actresses, and just a little bit more approachable. Yeah. Also, a phenomenal singer too. I mean, the one thing that I think people get away with now, after Grease, which obviously started this genre pretty much, is the sort of mid-level singing in musicals, Joe. Like, usually they're not that great of singers, but I mean, the singing in this movie was, it was up there.
It's funny that you say that, because like I think 2 weeks ago I was at a wedding, and like, obviously this is a wedding staple. They're always going to play this, Grease Lightning and all that.
Right.
And what's funny is like, I noticed, I took away two things. I noticed like when it was Never Gonna Give You Up, right? Like Rick Astley.
Right.
Every generation, whether you're a 5-year-old kid or a 70-year-old adult, everybody was singing Never Gonna Give You Up. And the same thing with Grease Lightning. All the kids, all the people were all singing every generation. So like,
that's so cool.
It's going to be forever. Like, it's always going to be it's like a timeless classic, right?
Honestly, Grease, probably one of the first movies I remember watching too. And like you're saying, it goes across all generations, right? Because my parents had that. Then they introduced me, I think it was Jurassic Park and then Grease. Like, those were they started taking us down through their younger years. And I remember seeing the Grease Lightning thing as well. And I remember just sort of bonding with my parents over it. I thought it was one of the coolest movies I'd ever seen. Growing up, I figured that the high school kids were a little old looking. I mean, that was the only thing I loved about Grease, the 45-year-old high school graduates.
Yeah. I think that was a main thing in those years, because even like some of the 80s sitcoms, they're playing like 19-year-olds, and you're like, dude, you're 35.
And now the kids who play 19-year-olds on Stranger Things, they look 14. So it's like a completely, it's a swap now. But it's crazy to see that, and the impact that the movie made as well. Now, again, not only just in the film world did Grease make a massive, shattering impact, but also in the world of music. The Grease soundtrack from the movie. We have some chart positions and data here. It went to number 1 in almost every single country. We're talking Australia, Austria, Canada, the Dutch charts, and the French charts. In terms of actual chart certifications, can you guess how many times platinum, just a wild guess, Joe, that this went in Australia? Obviously being a massive hit musically in Australia because of her.
How many times platinum? Let's say 6.
Grease soundtrack went 14 times platinum.
Wow.
In Australia.
Platinum? Well, what's platinum in Australia? Because the numbers change, right? Like
I believe it's 1 million.
Okay, yeah, it's probably like Canada. I think Canada, 1 million, you're like diamond status. You're like even higher than platinum. But yeah, that's impressive. Like, it explains what I said, right? It's going to be forever. It's like it couldn't go any higher than 1, right? I guess first place. It's always like so. Yeah, no, it's and I'm not a musical fan by any stretch, but obviously this one I was like, maybe, I don't know when, I can't remember the first time I was exposed to it, but I remember, like you said, it was a movie. It felt different. It felt like special when I was watching it as a kid, so it's like, oh, pay attention.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, very sad loss. It's funny because I was, having a conversation with someone and I was saying, we were talking about how nice she seemed, how normal of a life she led or seemed to have led. And I'm like, yeah, Hollywood didn't get to her, like, or she didn't let them get to her,
And it's sad to see how many of the female leading ladies, did let it happen to them, especially, in her era. You look at the girl from Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland. I mean, a lot of these people, and men as well, people just in the business, it takes a toll. So it was good to see her go on from this and sort of continue in the way that we hoped she would.
Yeah, and it's like, you really don't have much control. Like when something like this takes off, you can't control. You can't tell people don't listen to this because now it's going to get too popular or my career is going to blow up. But like, I guess she managed to keep it like her way, and it was probably some hard choices. She probably said no to some, like, a lot of lucrative deals, right?
I could imagine she probably turned down a lot of stuff. And just a little anecdote, because now I'm down the rabbit hole on Grease, and this might be cool for some of the listeners. Most of the tracks that were written for the musical Grease were actually written by in collaboration with a group called Sha Na Na. Now, they mostly did vocals on this. They didn't do as much of the writing. But Sha Na Na was a 10-member musical group from New York. They were a rock and roll doo-wop group who originally started as a parody of musical theater. And then it turns out that they ended up being some of the biggest musical people in the theater world. Quick message before today's show. We have a little announcement from our friends at Cultural Vultures, of course, the Inner Sleeve alumni, and Joe can tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, and like, as people may have, I haven't said this in a while, right? Oh, the first artist signed to SoundMojo, whatever.
Yeah,
but
your catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was the first video we published, an artist that signed up, and so I'm super happy when I got the message that Danny here from Cultural Vultures, he got the 9th spot out of 200 artists for Odyssey's opening act. Now, people were saying, what's opening act, right? So like, we go to opening act, and basically it's the opportunity for someone like any artist in any genre, right, to go and open up at the Hollywood Bowl. I'll go here so we can see. It's definitely better than I. So basically, one artist will open up Odyssey's biggest concert of the year at the Hollywood Bowl and take home 10K, man. That's pretty
not a bad
good
chunk of loot. That's awesome.
Yeah, and what's cool is, like, if you go through the page, you'll see that, like, so look, it's like Young and a Million. They've opened up for Black Eyed Peas, Coldplay, Doja Cat. So like, there's more than just the Hollywood. You know, Kid Leroy. So there's more than just the Hollywood Bowl. So
it's a good name to be associated with as well.
Exactly. So this is a great opportunity. So I'm super happy that, a little guy from Kentucky is just like, boom, 9th out of 200 artists. Anyways, I'm just super happy that someone like from SoundMojo, like that, we picked and got this great opportunity, and I hope he wins, man. Like, I hope he gets a top spot. And if he does, we'll definitely be covering the whole experience here on SoundMojo, that's for sure.
Hopping over to the SoundMojo Community Tab. Of course, this is where we post polls and questions on YouTube to see what you guys are listening to and what you want to see next on our channel. And in honor of the Def Leppard Hysteria anniversary of 35 years, we released this little poll.
Yeah, we basically put out, in honor of, like you just said, the fact that the album sold over 20 million copies worldwide to date. And pick your favorite, like, you know, the best, the Def Leppard album. So, I mean, there's, many more albums than we have options. So we put Hysteria. So Hysteria got 60%, which I'm not surprised, I'm not surprised. Slang got 1%. I put that in there on purpose because in 1994 or 5, whenever, or 6, whenever they released that, that you could feel that they were sort of like forced to shift their sound a bit because of all the grunge and all the rock kind of stuff. And they were so super polished, but it was still a good effort. I mean, I enjoyed some of the stuff, but I mean, that's when I started to, unfortunately, tail off of.
So they went
Leppard.
darker for a while.
Yeah, that's it. High and Dry is one of their beginning, first or second album, which I love. And, let us know in the comments. So Pyromanian, High and Dry in no particular order. So definitely agree with Sean Gagnon. Colton R. Magby. Haven't listened to any of their albums. That's fair enough.
We appreciate your honesty, Colton.
Yeah, man. Why not? I haven't listened. Actually, I listened to the last album that just released, which was not bad. I was surprised, in terms of not that the fact that it's a good or a bad album, just that I could power through it because for some reason when I hear some stuff that if I'm just not into it, it's like I'll skip right away.
Totally.
Game X Simmons, Not Hysteria. Well, my man, I wouldn't say that's my favorite album, but it's definitely up there. I love that album. A to Z. A to Z, grew up with that album, love it. But my personal favorite would have to be Pyromania.
See, that's the other one I hear all the time is Pyromania.
Oh yeah, I think that would be like for me the pinnacle. And the first two I couldn't get into as a kid, and I got into them years later as an adult, and the genius behind them. Like, I mean, I still like the band when I was younger, but like when I listen to those albums, I can hear, like after watching all these years, watching interviews, let's say with Joe Elliott saying the whole point of their sound was AC/DC meets Queen. But I grew up listening to Pyromania, Hysteria, and obviously with those vocals and stuff. But when you go back to the first two albums, you really, really hear that. You hear AC/DC rock riffs with those vocals, layered vocals. So that was a nice surprise for me. But Pyromania is definitely my every time I put that album on, that opener, as soon as I drop the needle or I press play on the CD, it's like instant goosebumps. Do you have any favorite Def Leppard albums?
Def Leppard, I gotta admit, Joe, they're probably the one band in rock that I seriously have missed. I feel like I just missed the boat on Def Leppard. My parents were a fan of a lot of groups. This wasn't one of them, So I mean, I think so. How about maybe I hate to answer your question with a question, but as a beginner, which album do you think I should sit and listen to?
Pyromania.
Pyromania, it is. Okay, so maybe for the next episode, I'll come back and I'll have to give you guys my reaction to Pyromania.
There you go. Yeah, Pyromania is just obviously a personal favorite, but it's just such a great rock album, and you can hear the Mutt Lange influence, with Mutt Lange being the producer that produced. I wonder if that guy's ever produced an album that didn't sell over 10 million copies.
Yeah, seriously.
AC/DC's Back in Black, and then Def Leppard. Then Bryan Adams' Wake Up the Neighbors is probably 30 million albums. And then going on to Shania Twain, producing all her success. Come on, dude.
A buck or two.
Seriously, this guy. But anyway, so listen to it and let us know next week, man.
And speaking of coming back with reactions, that's exactly what we're about to do with you guys' song reactions from this week. So, I mean, as always, we put up a question and we said, what are your music suggestions for us to listen to this week? We'll discuss our favorites on the next Inner Sleeve. And we actually got a lot of different comments on this one this week.
Yeah, so Game X Simmons, he had suggested the Zolas last week, and I had never really heard of them, but I listened to it this time, and I thought it was really cool. It's definitely a different sound, like you said, a little bit rock, but slightly different.
Poppy rock kind of thing, lighter.
Happy, I enjoyed that quite a bit. But this time he suggested the artist called Stella, who just released Up and Away on Sub Pop Records. And I listened to this. I really liked the song. I love the vibe because it was it's like a little bit melancholic, very melancholic feeling, right? But I don't know. It's hard to put into words, as I listen to it, I'm trying to write down my thoughts, my feelings right away. And I got melancholic. I love the vibe. I love the retro-ness of it. Her voice is great. Her videos are really cool. And, so I definitely added this one to my playlist. That's for sure.
The ones that I added, I actually have my list right here. So I think my favorite was the Acid Rain track by Lorne. That one there, definitely. I feel like I've heard that one before. I feel like it was in probably a bunch of TV shows and movies.
Well,
and Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was here suggested that one, Acid Rain, and me too. But I think that video was like at 80 million views or something. Like,
Okay.
I hadn't heard the songs, but the video was really cool. Like with the cheerleaders dancing like after a car accident. It was very like, wow, okay.
See, it gets so lonely on Spotify. I got to start
Yeah.
watching the music videos for these.
I can't. For some reason, I just gravitate to YouTube and I'm like, I'll watch the video. And some of
Yeah.
these don't have videos; they're just whatever. So I
Okay.
just listen to them. But I got like post rock. You know, post rock seems to be like that rock where it's like almost like shoegaze they call, where they're looking down, always changing their pedals, and like very like big, epic kind of like distorted guitars, but not like in the sense
Yeah.
of tight, fast like metal, but just more like a blanket or something of sounds. You know, like. So that was cool, you know, and like I mean like I said before, the video got 80 million views, and it was definitely something to watch, you know. So definitely, if someone wants to check it out, check out the video. It's worth it.
Guster as well, definitely an artist that I wasn't quite expecting. I mean, how would you describe Guster when you first heard them? Because I mean, their sound is so unique.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because like not Donald Fagen, that was his suggestion. He said you'll know this if you listen to the Buzz in the early 2000s. At first, I was like, the Buzz, that's a radio station here, local to here. So I said I listened to that for sure. So I'm like, I'll know it. But surprisingly, this one must have just like gone past my radar because I didn't recognize. I listened to a few of the songs, didn't recognize any of them, and like you know, and it sounds like to me the end of the 90s, like the transition from the 90s, like rock songs to like 2000s. And as I was listening to it, you know, and working, and then like you know, like I was saying, I just put down. I got REM vibes. I got an REM vibe of like one of the choruses or one of the songs. You know, you.
I kind of heard that in a way. I almost heard a bit of Coldplay influence. Just a little tiny bit, not the modern stuff, but more so when they decide to be more of a band. And, you know, I like the way that they were hitting it. And they're actually also featured on the Woodstock 99 soundtrack. So
that's cool.
I'm not sure if they performed at that or if it was just featured in the documentary,
Yeah.
but definitely just a little anecdote there.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because like they sound like Coldplay because like if they were already putting out albums in the late 90s, they were before Coldplay. They predated
Right.
Coldplay. You know what I mean? But see what I mean? That sound was already starting to evolve and get into the 2000s.
It was bubbling up.
Which like Coldplay, you know, like Muse was around already or about to start. So there was like the 90s were like being brought into the 2000s. So that's where I got that vibe a bit, you know? Did you get to check out Ronnie Size?
I did, yeah. This song was really odd. I felt like I was walking through a back alley kind of vibe, but it almost felt like it was in the cyberpunk universe. Like it felt like
That's true.
I got steampunky sort of back alley vibes.
That's interesting that you said that. I wouldn't have thought of that, but you're 100% right. Yeah, you do get those vibes. So this was suggested by HWC Transgender Ministries. I tried to get that in one breath. But yeah, no, I was already familiar with Ronnie Size. I had listened to an album called The New Forms back in, I guess, around 99, 98, 2000, around those days. I really got into trip hop and drum and bass and anything UK, you know, kind of sound that wasn't just like Oasis UK, you know, or whatever. But
Yeah.
like electronic stuff, Goldie, Prodigy, I like, you know, Massive Attack, heavily into that stuff. And yeah, drum and bass, I just love it. It just makes, as soon as I hear it, especially like, this isn't the case, but when you have like ambient sort of like electronica stuff, but with drum and bass beats, you have me. You're like, I'm already in love. This is just like you said, that cyberpunk, gritty, dark, back alley kind of vibe, you know, like no nonsense, no bullshit, you know, like boom, you know. So yeah.
Such a contrast from some of the other tracks on here. I mean, Wish by Diplo, that was a track that caught me by surprise because it features Trippie Redd, which, you know, I definitely, Diplo and Trippie Redd definitely didn't see it coming. I guess it makes sense in some reality. You know, I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Trippie Redd much, Joe?
Not at all, you know, but Diplo big time because like I've done, you know, I mean, how could you not know Diplo?
That's
even
the
the
thing,
stuff that
man.
he releases on his own is so good. Such a good, like, prolific producer. Incredible. I like the song. Again, I got melancholic vibes because of the way he was singing and stuff. It was more laid back. And it reminds me of an artist that's on SoundMojo called Big Melancholy, which, you know,
oh, wow.
I'll definitely link here because you'll see what I mean, because it has that kind of sort of hip hop rap kind of angst, but like the music's super like not romantic, but like nice and soft and plush, you know?
Do you think that that's, I mean, what's your first reaction to that? Because like that type of singing is the typical Trippie Redd singing, and he's considered a rapper now. So like, what are your thoughts on that sort of interlocking?
I don't know. Didn't really form an opinion on it. Like it's okay. It like didn't rub me the wrong way. It just sounded like okay, went well with the song, you know. Which I just wanted to say thank you, Corey Shattles, for suggesting that.
Yes,
That
shout
was
out to
cool.
Corey, and shout out to all you guys.
You liked it then, the Wish by Diplo?
I definitely did. That was the one that made it to my playlist. And for anyone who's wondering about the Guster songs that made it to my playlist, I ended up adding so far Barrel of a Gun and What You Wish For. So those are the two that really jumped out on the Lost and Gone Forever album. But I'm definitely going to be listening to more. And I mean, we look forward to seeing all you guys' suggestions. This is probably the highlight of the show intro every single week, seeing what you guys are sending in. And it's been a lot of fun.
I always say this, you know, but I think I know music, but every time I'm taught like, wow, no, I don't know music. You know, there's always more to
always
discover.
so much more. I feel the same way, man. But that's why we love you guys sending all these suggestions, because, you know, we can't scour every corner of the web.
Yeah, we try, but we can't.
We try. Now we're going to hop into our interview portion of the show with the man himself, Kurt Newman, the mastermind behind BoDeans. And if you guys are not familiar with him and his work and all the stuff he's been doing throughout the years, you have come to the perfect place. And we'll catch you guys right afterwards.
And we come a long way in this living, chasing our dreams and forgiving. We're spending our time, yeah, living in heaven. Yeah, we come a long way. There's a long way to go.
So where are you calling us from today, Kurt?
I am just outside Austin, Texas, about 15, 20 miles west of Austin.
Very cool. And that's your home base because you've been doing most of your recording there so how long exactly have you been doing your own recording in Austin? Let's maybe get that timeline.
Probably for about the last 20 years, I've been recording down here. Different studios I've had off my house. Right now, I'm in between. I sold the house last year and I'm building a new one. So I'm in between. So I'm in an apartment right now, but I'm dealing with it. You know, these days you can work almost anywhere. So because of technology, so you're lucky that way.
Yep. 100%.
Do you find it to be a challenge moving through different studios and going to different locations, or is it a situation where you're familiar with each one and each one can be like a different home for you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of both. You know, I started doing this so long ago that it was all so different. You know, you know, being in a studio back then was almost a weeding out process because you stand in a room and you play your song and either it sounds good or it doesn't, and there was no fixing it really. You know, it just was what it was, and you had to have good sounding rooms and microphones and engineers and all this kind of stuff to really make it work. And now there's so much that has changed about it that you can go into a hotel room anywhere and just start recording something and make it sound pretty good with software instruments and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think you can make it work anywhere, but I also think there's something special about getting a bunch of people in a room and playing music together. It's just because of the pandemic in 2020, everybody got shut down. So everybody did these records themselves because they were all alone in their house and there was nothing else they could do.
Were you resident to or hesitant to the technology and working in the box kind of thing?
Well, I still try to stay in the analog world as much as possible and not just work in the box. But there's times when it's certainly a lot simpler to do something on the computer or let the computer help you with it. But I like to play stuff as much as possible. And I've always had really good timing because I grew up as a drummer and I was a natural at it. So I was able to I'm good at playing stuff in time and making it sound good. And it's really what I did with BoDeans all along. I was the music guy who played most of the instruments in the studio. We just didn't really push that narrative much. But ever since, even before we got a record contract for our demos and stuff, I was pretty much playing everything. And then we would just sing together on top of it. And so I'm really used to doing it that way. A lot of our records, I would go on the drum kit and I would just sing the song in my head while I was playing the drum beat, and then I would kind of build up the songs that way. But we wanted people to kind of feel that it was the band playing too. So we didn't really push the narrative of Kurt's doing all this stuff, but I just learned how to do it all because of how we always did it. So I'm capable of doing it that way, but I do like the perspective of getting a bunch of different people together in a room and doing it that way too.
No, 100%. So, I mean, how about in terms of the name BoDeans? When exactly did that come in for you, for the people who may not know, and how does that exactly evolve for you?
BoDeans, to me, the first time my friend suggested it, I was thinking of Bo Diddley and James Dean, which were very much 50s rock and roll kind of icons. And we were trying to do kind of a rockabilly rock sound at the time. And so it seemed like it would represent our music really well. And to kind of give it that family name sound, BoDeans. A lot of people, I was unaware at the time, it was Jethro Bodine from the Beverly Hillbillies. I hadn't thought of that at the time, but so I think people associate both with the name. But for me, it was more that 50s kind of James Dean kind of feel to the name I liked.
Do people ever think that there's someone in the band called BoDeans? Because I know that a lot of groups have that issue.
Probably. We used to early on call ourselves that, Kurt Bodine. So I sign autographs by saying Kurt Bodine because I've just always done it that way. So
it's like, by the way, which one's pink?
Yeah, sort of that.
That whole vibe. So, I mean, how about your actual process? I know we were touching on it, but I'm just curious. You said you like to keep most of your recording in analog. So, I mean, maybe if you could walk us through how much of your recording is analog versus software sort of utilities?
Well, usually it's at 95% analog. I did use some of the drum software on this record. But all the keyboards that are played and all of the guitars, and of course all the singing, all the basses and stuff, all that's analog stuff that I play into the computer, and then I typically don't try to fix stuff, I just want to make it sound as good as it can the way it is, So I'll do, a lot of passes at something when I'm trying to find or play a good part rather than trying to have the computer fix it for me. So usually it's mostly all analog, and I use like a Neve console to go through to make it sound, get some of that beautiful warm sound that we have in the analog world with transistors. And I think there's things for electric guitar that an analog transistor or tube can do that the digital world just can't do. And so and maybe it's because I came from that place. But for me, I need to have that kind of analog sound in there. And then you just try to get it, to all work together as best as possible. I tried to create some real atmosphere here. I like using a keyboard, like a synthesizer, to use to create kind of an atmosphere, whether it's some motion sounds going on or some ethereal sounds going on in the background. And then kind of putting layering guitar right in the middle of that on top of it, and then usually that's pretty much enough. It's rare unless you're doing a big rock thing where you really have to get to a big beat and stuff like that.
Yeah, I noticed that as I was listening to some of the, I like to call ear candy, the keyboard stuff in the background and stuff. Is there anything like I'm curious because like, I grew up right in the middle of analog / digital. So I got a bit of both, like I got like in the studio, the punching in thing but I wasn't lucky enough to work with two inch. It was more like the ADAT stuff. But I was curious, like what has like really opened your eyes and said, holy, where's this been all my life in terms of a digital tool that really helped you?
Well, I think there was a beauty to the old world. Like, when I say going in the studio was kind of a weeding out process, it was, you had to be able to do a performance, and I think in the big view of what you're doing here with music, you should be able to do that right from the beginning. You should be able to stand there and sing your song well and have it come across well as it is. And there was something great about the analog studios and that world of doing it And that's not to say people aren't necessarily standing there and doing that. A lot of them probably are, but I'm just saying that it's an important step in the process to be able to make it sound good that way. Because eventually you're going to have to go out there and play your song, and it's got to come across, you know, whether it's the exact same performance or not, it's got to work somehow. So, you know, I think sometimes the tools can be a hindrance because they make things so easy, you know, that I think you're kind of losing some of your originality if you just go to those all the time. So I try to shy away from them a bit, but like I say, I use a keyboard, and there's obviously sounds in the keyboard, but it'll often take me, you know, days and days to find something that I feel is really going to lend itself to a song. So you're still kind of searching for a sound like you might on a guitar or something like that. And so I try to keep it in the human world as much as possible, and I try to keep it out of the pre-recorded kind of hands as much as possible. But like when I use some of the drum software out there, it's just like, you know, these are guys who went and recorded some of the very best sounds in the very best studios, and there's nothing I can do in an apartment that's even going to compare to that. So in that respect, it's kind of wonderful to be able to work with as far as a songwriter and getting material done. It's a really great tool to have, because getting a great drum sound can be a bit of a wrestling match, especially if you don't have a recording studio. You're going to have to deal with a lot of neighbors.
Yeah, that's it. Like, that's what I found like was the hardest hurdle in terms of like is nailing that drum sound. Because I think you're 50%. If you get a good drum sound, you're like halfway there almost in terms of like.
You are, but the great thing about using 2-inch tape was that it had a natural compression that compressed the drums in a beautiful way that you just can't do when you record into a computer. So like what we used to do is we'd go record drums at a studio with 2-inch tape, then maybe bring stuff home to a computer and start working there. You know, but even finding the 2-inch tape studios is getting rarer and rarer. And so like I'm saying, the drum software, that's hard to compete with these days because they've done such a good job at it.
What are your thoughts on the concept of AI coming in and completely mixing songs? Because we've heard about this. I mean, obviously the human feel would be completely gone. How do you react?
I wonder if our human species will really be able to relate to it or not. You know, I mean, they say we're on the path of moving towards artificial intelligence ourselves. Maybe it's something we like because it's so new and interesting sounding to have a computer design a song for you. Maybe we'll like it. But what I like about music is that the misery of it, you know, or the longing of it, you know, longing for love in your life, or loneliness or sadness and depression. Music just speaks to that so well, and it's such a great tool for bringing us together that I don't know if a computer can really touch on that, because I'm not sure it can ever feel something like that. You know, that's our gift of humanness. Like I've struggled with depression my whole life, and one of my daughters does too, and she asked me how I deal with it. And then for me, music is really a tool for dealing with depression. You know, it's something that can help lift you up out of it, something else you can focus on to kind of get it out of your soul or your brain, wherever it's residing. And then you can walk into a room full of people and you can sing together, and then you all together kind of get away from any of this darkness or this pulling apart that we do, and you can all unite to this like really electric place. So I'm not sure a computer can really get in that territory.
Yeah.
And I keep hoping that maybe it's some part of our humanness that we kind of hang on to.
That's a phenomenal point. I mean, it's scary to think about all of our, you know, recognizable human, you know, attributes going away, and how that could affect music. So, I mean, moving on to the actual human element of it, you know, what you make with your hands, of course, you know, making guitars and crafting. What exactly is your process for that entire thing, and when did that start for you? Yeah,
you know, I played drums all through school. Even it wasn't until I got out of high school that I even picked up a guitar. So I was like 18 years old. And right from the get-go, I was kind of tearing guitars apart and re-putting them back together in a way that I thought sounded more interesting. So I spent a lot of years doing that until eventually it occurred to me, like, if I can get this guy over here to cut me a body out of this wood I like, and if I can get this guy to make me a neck the way I'm looking for it, and if I can wire it all together the way I think I want it to be wired, maybe it's good right from the start then. And so it was about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago that I really started doing it. I had a friend of mine build me a custom guitar before that, probably about 25 years ago. But so about 15 years ago, I started putting them all together and learning more about what I liked and so I've built about a dozen of them. And I really like the process because they all sound real different, and I look for wood. This is very humanist too. I look for wood that all has kind of a story behind it. Like one of my guitars, the wood came from a barn in Canada, and it's over 100-year-old piece of wood. So it was sitting there as one of these big giant beams in a barn, weathering winter and summer and spring for 100 years. And now it's out there and these lights, just screaming and making these noises. And it's just, it feels like a wonderful story to me, that wood has been around that long for 100 years. And here it's serving another purpose. Who would have thought, right? And so that's what I really like about it is creating guitars that kind of have a bit of a story behind them.
What was the guitars that you did play? What made you was missing that you were looking to improve it or make it your own?
Well, I don't play guitar exactly like other people. I started out trying to play that way, but I just never connected with it so much. So I do a lot with my hands when I'm playing, as far as playing with my fingers, and I keep the whammy bar, kind of trem bar, in my hand while I'm playing and stuff, and I do these swooping things and all that kind of. I couldn't find that kind of guitar anywhere that would do that, and I also couldn't find a guitar like, I have a guitar I really like that's got the mahogany wood, which would have been something you used in a Les Paul, but it's got a maple top on it, which is something that gets the sound reacting a lot quicker. So you have a combination of these really warm tones, but it lends itself to like quicker, brighter playing as well. And because of the bridge, I like so. And then I put these capacitors in there that I found really brown the sound out, kind of warm it up in a way that I don't find in other guitars as well. So it's all those little things together that you do. And because I'm not the type of guy who likes switching to 50 different guitars during his set, I like a guitar that can do a lot of different sounds. And so I design them that way as well. So they make all kinds of different sounds that you can work with, and they're very versatile. But they always sound really warm, and I like that about them the most.
Do you find it more challenging to create your music in terms of melodies and songs and structure, or do you find it more challenging to do the engineering part and the building and that side of it?
The melody stuff comes pretty easy for me.
Okay.
It's just always kind of there. So I don't struggle much with that. The technical side, it used to be more of a challenge, but I've learned enough throughout my years of recording to put stuff together in a way that I don't have to think about it so much, because I think that can be the biggest drawback if you're going to record yourself at home. You don't want to spend any time dealing with technical issues, right? You really want to get ideas down and work on them, but not the gear should be doing what it does in the background. And you should not have to think about it. So everything for me is designed to just like, oh, I want to try a keyboard part, turn it on and do it. Or I want to try this, turn it on and do it. And I don't have to think about it much at all. And so it's gotten a lot easier and a lot quicker. When I was doing music for the Netflix show, The Ranch, I was trying to do a lot of music quickly. So I just really had to design a system that I could do that and make it sound pretty good quickly and then get it to them. And because it was hit or miss, they were looking for specific things and I was writing a lot. And so if I wrote 5 specific things, there might be 1 or 2 that they liked, so you have to do a lot of stuff. They also wanted complete songs from me. They didn't want 30-second snippets of music. So, so I was doing 3, 4, 5-minute songs and having to do, 4 or 5 of them every few weeks to get, at least the basic ideas of them done.
And you did about 70, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
What's between new stuff, re-records of some of my old stuff, and then instrumental stuff. So between all of that, I was able to get, I think the producer said I had a piece in every episode, so that's about 8 seasons, and it's
Holy,
a lot of
that is
music.
insanity.
Did you
Yeah.
enjoy the process? Because I'm like, I'm sure there's a lot of rewrites and like little touch ups and little things.
I really did. It was the first time I ever got to write songs where people were saying like, well, here's what we're writing. We're going to have a death in the next season. And so we need you to write a song about people dying and loss and that kind of thing. Or we want you to write a song about small towns and growing up in a small town and what that was like and stuff. So they gave me specific subjects to write songs about. And I found that to be really nice because you don't have to just wake up one day, grab the guitar and think, what should I write about today?
Bit of a roadmap.
Yeah, it was kind of like somebody was feeding you lines almost, And you were able to just take it and run with it. And I did like that. So I would write 5 or 6 songs about hometown, small town, things like that. And then they would pick and choose a couple that they liked.
Wow, that is so incredible. So, I mean, is that something you'd like to do more of as well, maybe in different shows, or is that sort of a one-off?
I like it if it works, if kind of what I do is working for the show. One thing that I struggled with, they wanted me to write kind of some new country sounding songs. And I just found that I didn't have the ability to write new country music. I tried, but I couldn't get out that kind of sound that those guys do. So if it's something I can do, I really like it because as a songwriter and a performer, you're really trying to find different avenues to get your music heard here and there. And, Netflix and shows like that, the streaming shows are a great opportunity for musicians to get heard somewhere.
Well, Kate Bush is definitely an example of that, right? With Stranger Things and being back on the charts.
That's a dream come true for any kind of like legacy artist like that. Someone rediscovers your music and you find a younger audience. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm curious because I've gone through the whole royalties and stuff in terms of radio play and stuff, but with Netflix, how is it royalty based or is it like a one lump sum or like?
You can do whatever you want. I structured my own kind of deal with them, which was based on the more they use, the better the deal is that they're going to get. So it gave them an incentive to want to use as much of my music as possible. And whereas just using, one song, they were going to have to pay more. So I was lucky. These guys were fans of the band. They wanted to help me. They wanted to work with me. And so I was able to just kind of structure that kind of deal with them, which wasn't traditional at the time. I'm not sure if it is now, but it wasn't necessarily based on a standard royalty kind of payment. It was more of just use as much as possible. And then we'll both be doing good.
Yeah, no, it sounds solid. Something else we wanted to ask you about really quick is the Staring at the World podcast, of course, your show. How did this show get started exactly, and how's it going now?
Well, my daughter had started a podcast company and said I should do one, and I didn't really think of myself of ever doing a podcast, but I always wanted to maybe teach a course at a college where you could talk about creativity in our everyday lives, because when I went to school, nobody talked about creativity. In fact,
right.
It's like they wanted to squash it down or minimalize it in your life as if it wasn't important. And I was just confounded because I thought creativity was at the core of everything we were doing. If you look at math or science or anything, it's all based on some creative idea you have that you want to dig into, but nobody was pushing that. And I was just like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
Even when my kids in school, they were right from the get-go, they were trying to squash that down. So I thought, I want to talk to kids about creativity and following your intuition and stuff like that. These things that are there for a reason in you and that no one in the scholastic system is telling you to listen to. In fact, they're telling you the opposite. And so I wanted to try and reach kids at some place, some level, and say, pay attention to this. Creativity is not just some art class down the hall that no one's taking serious.
Yeah.
It's something that they should be talking about at the beginning of every day in every class. What did you do that was creative? Who's got any great ideas today? What are your ideas? Let's work on them.
Yeah.
That's how we should be teaching, and we're not. So I thought, I'm going to talk about this in a podcast. I want to talk to creative people, and I want their stories, and I want to try and encourage people to think about creativity in their life every day.
Who were some of your favorite guests on the podcast? Of course, you've had Stevie Van Zandt, a bunch of very recognizable names.
I did. And Steve Vai, another great musician, but I've also talked to some other guests that were not that necessarily, I'm trying to remember his name now. I can't remember his name. I talked to a guy who started Bluefish, which was a upscale concierge service, really interesting guy. He went to Hong Kong to be a stockbroker, wasn't happy doing it. And while he was trying to do it, he was working the door at a club. And little by little, he built up such a network of people and who they were and what they did that he had basically a Rolodex. And when someone asked him to put a party together, he was able to oh, sure, I'll call this person, and put it all together into this great thing. Well, he built this $1 billion empire now of being, everybody calls him, like Elton John wants a party, they call him, Lady Gaga wants something, they call him. He got parties where people got to meet the Pope. He reached the Pope.
No kidding, hey?
and
a connection or two.
It was just by letting things happen. He wasn't looking to do that. He wanted to be a stockbroker. But instead, this great thing that was happening on its own was happening. And that's the kind of stories I love. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Sometimes your vision where you think you need to be is just really getting in the way of what's right in front of you. And so I love stories like that. I just want people to listen to their intuition about stuff. It's just as important as your sight and your hearing and all those kind of things, but we never learn to pay attention to it.
Many times in life, I've told myself, I should have just gone with what I thought. I knew it or whatever. There's so many times that happens.
Yeah, it doesn't mean everything will go perfect, but I think the voice is there for a reason, and I think we should pay attention to it.
But it's also like you said before earlier with the podcast and and teaching children about creativity, right? Because sometimes you're doing this right now and you have this vision, but it doesn't end up that way. So you always have to sort of be like a river, right? And just kind of go where it flows.
Yeah, that's the Buddhists have been talking about that for 3,000 years.
That's it.
Bend to the wind, don't be so rigid about your stuff, exactly. And learn to flow like the river flows. All these, nature is a great teacher if you pay attention to it and just watch and pay attention. But our species is, these are not the things we're taught to do. These are not the things we're told to do. And we need to rethink it. And per our earlier discussion, it's kind of like getting back to our humanness and learning to pay attention to that more.
Without a doubt. So the latest record is called For the Last Time. Kurt, what else are you excited about coming up post-pandemic with the music, BoDeans, and the podcast?
Well, now we get to go out and play songs. We've been doing some big summer shows, and I get to go outdoors and 1,000 people in a park somewhere and play shows for them and sing these songs. And that's what I look forward to right now the most, is being able to keep doing that for the year. There's so much division going on in the world. I never thought we were going to see another land war. And here we are. I never thought there was going to be America pulling itself apart. And here we are. And I just think music and the arts is the one tool we have to bring everybody back together. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the music, is I'm trying to put positive energy out there, bring this world back together. We get together in a room and we sing songs and we all unite. Music has that power to do that. So that's what I'm focused on for the year, is just going out and singing these songs with people.
I wanted to mention, because we spoke before and about Tom Petty, right? Yeah. Because we read your quote on the day Tom Petty died. You're really sad, but because I was just driving down. I went up north again. I went to immerse myself in nature this weekend. And it's as I'm driving down, the radio station was playing a 1985 show live concert of Tom Petty. And I was it sounded like a ton of bricks, basically. It just sounded amazing. The band sounded so good live. So when I read that quote today, I was we have to talk about Tom Petty.
Yeah. Well, when I was growing up, his records just, they were dominating the radio, and I was just learning to really play music and try to write music. And the longer I knew his music, the more I knew it, just the more respect I had for his ability to write songs. I've said it before, he's for me, the pinnacle of songwriting. I just thought he did it great. He could do it in a way that was just really beautiful and emotional, but he could also write a great pop song. And I thought
Yeah.
that's true songwriting for me, is that you can do both, that you can reach people on their highs and their lows. That's what I've always strived to do as well. And he did it better than anyone, I think. And the Heartbreakers too, the band itself, the whole band was just, they had a great sound. They were the very kind of definition of American rock and roll music. And they were a huge influence on me. And when he died, I was really kind of heartbroken about it, because I thought he had a long ways to go.
Yeah. One thing about, like, same here, growing up with Tom Petty, he was always around, right, with fantastic songs and like you said, pop songs and just rock songs. And the funny thing is, I never thought, like, it's not someone that I would, like, he's not in the Hollywood headlines at all, like, it's not someone that you would always see. But when you hear the songs, you're like, man, this guy was just brilliant, like, at putting a song together, and like, they're timeless the way I see him,
Yeah, they are. He was paying attention, which is really what you need to do, I think, if you're going to be in the arts, is to pay attention to what's going on around you, and write about that, or let it affect, if you're a painter, it affects your art somehow, in some way. You just got to pay attention. And it's not necessarily the headlines, it's the little things that are going on around you too. And Tom was really good at incorporating that stuff into his music.
Without question. Who else do you think is up there in his league in terms of some of the pinnacles of the business, or are these guys that you've always enjoyed?
Well, I was always a big, I like Springsteen's energy as well. He has his style too. I don't think he was quite the songwriter Tom Petty was necessarily. Not that he was a great songwriter. He wrote great songs, but his performing was what really caught me with Bruce. I always loved how much he put into his performances. It's like he was giving everything to his audience, and I really like that. But it doesn't always have to be, just the big rock music as well. I think Lady Gaga's a great singer. I think Pink is a really great singer, and they themselves put tremendous amount into their art, as well. So it's not just the old stuff that I like. I think there's a lot of great performers out there who put themselves 100% into their artwork. I also love listening to some of the old 50s jazz musicians and what they did too. For me, there's nothing like Stan Getz type piece from the 50s that will speak to depression and emotion and sadness and longing like his instrumental music will. So I think you can find it everywhere. People who were really good at their craft and what they were doing, it's out there. You just got to pay attention and listen for it.
Yeah, for me, it was like Wes Montgomery, those old records.
Yeah, there's so many. There's Sonny Rollins too. I heard stories that he used to go out in the Brooklyn Bridge or something like that at 3 a.m. and just play his saxophone on the bridge. And when I listen to him playing, I hear that, he had this endless longing for something in this universe to connect to. And so that's what I love about music and the arts in general, is that longing for more of our humanness.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Kurt, is there anything else you want to let the people know here on SoundMojo about what you got coming up or where to find you? You
can go to BoDeans.com, and, that'll always have like our music and our tour dates and stuff like that up there. And, we have, of course, like a BoDeans YouTube and stuff if you want to see videos and hear music there as well. So just look for us, look for the music, give us a listen, and look for us if we're out there and you're out there sometime, come see us, say hi.
Awesome, man. We will do. Thank you so much. That was perfect.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
We come a long way in this living, chasing our dreams and forgiving. We're spending our time, living in heaven. Yeah, we come a long way. There's a long way to go.
I want to give a huge shout out to Kurt Newman, the mastermind behind BoDeans, for taking the time to join me and Joe on this episode of Inner Sleeve. I got to say, Joe, this is someone who you can tell from the beginning has a true respect for music. It's like even just seeing him speak about music, you can just see how passionate it is. It really seems to just be coursing through his veins.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like I tried a couple of times in the interview to throw him about new technology and computers and recording, and nothing fazed him. He was just like, yeah, that's great. I'll use it. but this is how I do it, or this is how I like doing it, or this is how it comes naturally, which is always the way you should do it. Whatever comes naturally, be it you're doing a beat like this, or you're doing a beat on a real drum, whatever works for you, just that's what you should do, you know? But yeah, no, definitely and like, even when he spoke about like, you know, like when you asked him about his podcast and you know, and what was like the motive behind his podcast, and it's like, you know, to teaching creativity, like he said, I'd always thought of teaching a course about creativity and being creative. And it's true. They like, it's the first thing any educational system will cut. Cause I know myself, like in kindergarten, I mean, besides just singing in the choir, we had no instruments to learn or music to learn. I learned on my own, whatever, on the side. And then same thing in high school. I remember, you know, the 7th grade, like there was a flute recorder kind of class. And then that kind of went down. Then secondary, you know, in grade 8 there was some guitar, but that was cut off halfway through the years. Like they always
funding, right?
Yeah, you know, they always cut the arts, and like I know we need math, we need all that other stuff, and you know, it makes a lot of sense. But it's always like you get the short end of the stick with art, because like when math and science and all that stuff, you know, which I love, but it doesn't take care of everything you need. You need that creative outlet or you know, that like meditational kind of state where you're doing something creative, you're not thinking about anything else. So basically it's giving your subconscious chance to just process all that other stuff instead of you always thinking about it, you know, like it just happens naturally. So that was interesting.
It's a good escape too, and a release, because you know, like you just sort of let it flow. And like you're saying, it's also with him a good thing that he has, I think, in all different aspects, is the ability to just go with the tide. You know, like whether it's a new technique, whether it's a new technology, he's just going to keep doing what he does, like you were saying. And I think I think we need more people like that, who sort of, they have their roots planted, their 2 feet planted firmly where they stand, and they're not being swayed by the outside perspectives.
Yeah, when we mentioned was it a Netflix series that he composed music for? And it
Country
was like,
Comfort.
Yeah, that's it. You know, and like he's so, I guess this comes with maturity, because I remember myself as a kid, if someone would ask me do some country stuff, I would just give it my best shot, even though it would be country my way, right? Like my version of country. So when he said like they've already licensed or used a bunch of his stuff, but they were asking for like some new country, it's like, it's not me. I don't do new country.
Yeah.
You know, I could try and, you know, and it'll probably be passable, but like he wants to be honest to his art, his craft, and to the, you know, the people he's working with, and the viewers that are going to watch this are going to be like, this ain't no new country, you know, like, I don't
exactly.
know. You know,
which is refreshing, you know, to see someone who actually cares about that aspect of it, because, you know, as we see so often, it seems to be the opposite in music. People care about, you know, just basically the dollar, and they don't really seem to care about authenticity or really much else.
Yeah, well, it's hard, man. It's tough. It's a cutthroat business. You don't want to give away. Like we said earlier about Olivia Newton-John, maybe she turned down some massive roles. You know,
yeah.
like
she must have.
She must have. Like she must have. It's like, I mean, if like that was just too global of a success for her not to have gotten offers and offers and offers. For
I wonder with
John
John Travolta as well, because I mean, he didn't do many other musicals, did he? Or I think he did Hairspray, but that was way.
Well, but he had done, I don't know the dates, but like Saturday Night Fever was another massive like movie and soundtrack. So I mean, like, yeah, he's been, and then he did Pulp Fiction, that I can think of right away, another massive movie explosion. So yeah, so he went on to do a bunch of stuff, as we all know. But you know, you don't want to, you know, when you're young, you're like, you want to, you know, you need to eat, you need to pay your bills, you need to do your stuff. You want, you know, every little opportunity will get you to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So you know, every little decision, like, and this, you can make you go crazy if you think about this all the time. But every little decision you've said since you were 5 years old has led you to this point.
Exactly.
Good or bad,
every left or right turn, or vice versa.
Every yes or no to going out with a friend, maybe you avoided an accident. Maybe, you know, like, anyways, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole, and then I'm going to be like all, you know, but.
We'll be on another podcast soon, but no.
Yeah, but that maturity, you could tell that maturity where he knows, like even myself now, I know when someone will ask me, hey, would you like to do this? I'd be like, no, I don't want to disappoint you. I don't have enough I have too much on my plate now. If I say, I'm going to disappoint you, you know, so like there's that maturity that comes at that point, you know, and he's there, obviously.
Without question. And, you know, the statement that he released as well, very touching. You know, I think he said, my dearest Olivia, you know, and obviously a sad thing for him. And you know, just a little anecdote on the positive side. I actually played Danny Zuko in the school play, Joe. I don't know if you guys knew that. But I had a little pick for my hair, and I was going, So there you go. Speaking
of Travolta, like, is there a favorite character that he's played? over the years that you like, would be into?
I hate that I have this as my answer, but I have to say Pulp Fiction. I know it's such a, I hate that, like, whenever the question is about movies and the answer is Pulp Fiction, I know it's too mainstream, but I can't help it.
Yeah, no, I know. But like, for me, I think back, and now I'm going to not only date myself, but I mean, this is like even pre-me, where it was Welcome Back, Mr. Cotter. He was like Vinnie Barbarino or something on that.
Okay.
And his whole attitude was, yo, Mr. Cotter. I saw it later on reruns because I was too young when it was first broadcast. But like, yeah, that was just such a cool character, funny character,
The man himself. We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this brand new episode of Inner Sleeve. If you guys like what you saw and heard, make sure to hit that subscribe button on all of our platforms. Of course, we're on YouTube, but we're also on our audio platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Anywhere you can find your audio podcasts, you can find Inner Sleeve. And make sure to go leave us a 5-star rating or review as well. Also follow us on social media at SoundMojo. All the links are down below. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. New content every single day for you guys on our channels. Let me breathe a little bit. Joe, am I missing anything?
Well, maybe we can mention merch. We still have merch. Check out the links below.
Yes, sir.
We have hoodies, caps, shirts, anything you could possibly want. Phone cases, pillowcases, God knows. So yeah, definitely check out the link below for some nice SoundMojo merch.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this brand new episode of Inner Sleeve. We'll catch you guys next week.